She's okay," Hiromi assured everyone as I sat face down on the table in the back of the club. The cool towel over the back of my head helped, but... what had I just done? Well, normally I don't let randoms steal my stage, but damn if that wasn't an act. Hell, pretty funny to be playing some amateur's songs only for her to be there. The owner of the club mentioned, laughing a bit. "Well, if she's on the radio, and she sent your club pounding, she's not an amateur, is she?" Hiromi argued a bit hotly. Maybe, maybe not. Solo act didn't do her any favors, but she at least knows how to play and sing. Wish I could say the same for most of the live bands I pull in. "Well, maybe we can talk about another gig, say next Friday night?" I might be tempted. "Hiromi," I said, rising up and rubbing the damp towel over my head. "Leave it." "Okay, Motoko, but think about it." She needled just a little and I nodded. Honestly, other than the embarrassment, and the desire to curl up in a ball and scream, I felt better than I did after finishing with violent hemorrhage. At least I could admit I felt some pride from the songs now. And not just a bitter boredom. I liked the new song. Malcolm offered, as I took in the fact both boys were sitting across from me. The first time I realized they were even here. Geez. I'd really been freaking when I finished up. "Yeah, it's..." Well, I played a more acoustic version, but it's a rock song actually. I stood up. "I'm gonna head out. I'm tired," I decided, and Malcolm and Itchy sort of checked each other before shaking their heads. "I think I'm going to stay for a bit." "Me too," both boys confirmed, and there was definitely a hint of excitement. "Don't get robbed or worse," I ordered, and then picked up my equipment and headed for the back door. "Hey, wait up," Hiromi called out, and I hummed as she held the door open for me, which did help out. The parking lot was half full, people hanging out doing drugs that would get them kicked out, or just saying goodbyes, but I ignored that and popped the trunk on the quadra to throw my equipment inside. "Hey, Motoko," Alice called out, the boys with her just outside of her little van as they both walked over as they saw me. "Jesus, what is all that?" Jared asked as he looked into the trunk and saw my ordnance. "Work equipment," I answered jokingly, as I threw everything inside and closed up. "What's up, Alice?" "Fuck, just let us work with you," she asked, begged, and kinda demanded. All of it was there. A need. What? "You need a band, you've got the songs, you got the talent, but solo acts aren't gonna get you what you need. We got a drummer, a bass, and I play guitar. You can sing. Better than me, I'm fucking done playing. I want to be more than just some Scop No Life band. We're all dedicated, we all play." I realized that these three were serious. Listen, that I started off uncomfortable at the idea of what Alice was saying. "We can talk about it, but now isn't the best time," Hiromi called out, saving me like usual. "Here's my number. I'm Hiromi Mitsunashi, Motoko's manager. I'm sure we can have a few practice sessions, see if you're a good fit for Motoko's songs and style before we lock anything in." I turned to look at my corpo, and couldn't help but relax a bit. Of course Hiromi would see the situation and just hammer through it in her most corpo style. Alice muttered as she reached out and took the card. "Preem. I'm getting out of here," I decided, and started to do just that. Heading straight for the driver's seat. I wanted to get far away from this club. "I'm coming too," Hiromi called out, and I just shrugged as she climbed in. "I'm not really heading home, want me to drop you off?" "No way," she cheered, smiling, and I just shrugged. "Wherever you're going is fine with me." "All right, I guess. Yeah, that works." When you said you were tired, I wasn't expecting this," Hiromi muttered. "I am tired, but I feel too wired to really relax, so I'm doing this." Then I struck and she deflected the blow and retaliated. I'd ended up at the dojo, figuring that swinging a stick around for a while would help me calm down. Hiromi had followed me inside, and now I was facing her with shinai in both our hands. It had been a long time since I've seen her really use a sword. I struck out a few testing pokes, and she retaliated, and then responded in kind, the clack of the shinai filling the empty dojo as only a few people were still around exercising at this time of night. Hiromi responded competently, but I recognized quickly that despite her practice with a blade, she wasn't a musashi. She was competent enough though, and so I decided to enjoy the motion of my body. I felt my shoulders relaxing from the tension I'd had on them, and my face broke into a smile. Don't smile like that while whooping my ass, Motoko, it's making things difficult. Hiromi eventually gasped out, and I chuckled as we stopped clashing. You are doing fine. When's the last time you really practiced? It's been a while. Too long obviously, if you can beat me now. Ugh. That was fun, thanks Hiromi. Yeah, you seem better. Want to talk about it? I started only to stop, so I ran my fingers through my hair, scratching at my scalp. I don't know. It was unexpected. Jumping up onto that stage, no time to plan and just playing. It felt good. Better than playing for VH. Better than playing some boring song that had no soul. I was being a bit toxic. The VH songs were still songs, still written by a bunch of young musicians wanting to play through soul out. It just kinda wasn't good. I felt like some stuck-up asshole. Maybe I just wasn't into whatever genre VH played. You were amazing up on stage, you know? Hiromi offered, and it was nice to hear. I liked being good at things, but it felt so weird to do musician stuff. Thanks. I decided to say, but then held out my shinai. But you need some practice. Hiromi looked from me to the shinai and her shoulders slumped. Go easy on me. Never. I cheered and we began again. The movement and action, carefully tracking Hiromi's attempts to bat my shinai away from poking her continuously, was quite fun. It was a nice stress relief. I could be good at this without the feeling of anxiety. I could just let my body move, my brain didn't need to worry. I saw it, Hiromi was tricky. She lashed out with her blade below my vision, well it would be if not for my karoshi, and I tapped it twice, once on the top to knock it away and then another lower down, causing her to stumble. Then tapped my blade on top of her head. Boop. I laughed at her stupefied look as she glared at me for a moment. And then I stilled. 100 reflex XP gained. Reflex leveled up. I felt my muscles tense and relax, a shift in how I held myself, and Hiromi seeing me stalled out for a second, lashing out. I bent backward almost casually, and then stepped past her, my shinai not even raised as I spun with her as she tried to swing down on me, another duck to the side and the blade went past without even ruffling my hair. And then again. Okay, now you're just being mean. Hiromi huffed out as she stopped swinging. I reached out before she could react and lifted her up and spun around. Ha ha ha. I cheered happily, ignoring Hiromi's squeak of surprise before setting her back on the ground. Hiromi, you're the best. I told her. Reflex 10 was huge. I'd finally done it. I could grind out handguns, or blades. And all the other skills. Maybe I'd finally take the time to grind out driving as well. That skill had been on the back burner for a while. Blades first. Again? I asked eagerly as I took a few steps back and held my shinai out, but Hiromi just huffed and hugged herself. Her face was a bit red. Did I surprise her that much? Was she angry because I had beaten her? I'm good for now, Motoko. You seem to have cheered up, she said, and I blinked. I guess I had. We left the dojo not long after and I drove Hiromi around to grab some food and we just ate it while parked laughing at drunk people stumbling out of clubs and puking all over the sidewalk, ruining any hope of them being cool. Look at that one. I cheered as a lady completely bent over in half, her massive stilt heels keeping her upright, and she puked basically backwards through her own legs. Gross. Hiromi cackled as she stuffed some fries in her mouth. I grabbed some and joined her, both of us laughing at the disaster people. Thanks, Hiromi, I said after a while as we ate. What? For saving me when Alice asked to join my band. I don't even have a band. I thought you wanted to be called Standalone Complex. That's. I looked away. I had said that. It's different when it's just like a solo band name, and an actual band name. Honestly, Motoko, I don't really get your discomfort. I mean, it's funny and cute, but you have nothing to be embarrassed about. You rock. I didn't know how to explain it. I had no talent with music before. In my last life, I was tone deaf. I mean, sure, I wanted to play the guitar or something as much as the next teenager, but I was no good. You remember when you first heard me sing and I was super bad? Yeah. That was hilarious. Mean. I mumbled, and Hiromi just laughed for a moment as she leaned over and poked at my cheek. It's funny because you got good so quick. Don't pout. Yeah, but whenever I sing, whenever I go up on stage, I feel like that person that couldn't sing. I know up here, I can do it. I said, poking at my head for a moment, and then I looked over and caught her eyes. But I feel like I'm about to sing my heart out and show my emotions and just end up laughed at. That'll never happen. You're so good now, no one will laugh at you. Yeah, I know. But my heart doesn't. When I played with Violent Hemorrhage, it was like. I didn't care, it wasn't my music, I had no attachment, so I didn't care that it kinda sucked, and I didn't feel much. But then I played my songs and I felt so much more. It was better, I liked it, but it also makes me feel anxious. But you liked it? Yeah. A lot more than playing for VH. Well, I'll never stop trying to get you to play more. You're too amazing. I want to see your name right there, Hiromi said, pointing out the window. There in the distance at the top of a building was one of the giant ads. Right now it was playing an ad for Lizzie Wizzy. Right there? Right there. I'll make sure of it. When it happens, I'll bring you right here and we can watch it together, Hiromi said confidently, and I couldn't help but laugh. I'll cry. I'm willing to accept that, Hiromi said almost stuffily, so I poked her just below her ribs, making her squeal. No. I guess I'll just have to keep playing music so your little idea comes true. That's right. I promise. So you can't make me a liar, Motoko, Hiromi offered back, and I couldn't help but laugh at her. You are such a corpo. Making me live up to a promise you made. I'm your manager, that's my job. Gotta whip the talent into action. She teased me and I just laughed along with her. It was nice to think about the future like that. Well, you'll have to schedule stuff around my mercenary contracts. PFFT. They won't be able to afford you, once you get going. I like doing it though. I countered, and she scoffed. Fine, I'll just set up a group to watch your back. We can call them Section 9, or something, a couple idiots, one with a car, the other with a car that he doesn't know how to drive. We both stopped and started cackling wildly, as Malcolm still had a tendency to lose control of his Caliburn. Really need to get Malcolm some lessons. Yeah, really. Hiromi agreed. Oh look. He's losing it. We both turned to watch another drunk or drugged guy stumble out of the club and after a few moments blew chunks over his expensive boots. Hiromi and I laughed at his misfortune. With reflex complete, I had a new grind to get through. I had a goal, one I'd wanted to do since I first picked up a katana. I was gonna deflect bullets. I was gonna do it. The dojo had been fun the night before, but it was empty. Even Sensei wasn't around, but today was a bright day and I was going to get this shit done. I drove the Kusanagi out of the apartment's garage, enjoying the feel of her under my legs as I cut into an empty spot in traffic, my signals alerting everyone which way I was going, and I accelerated to the speed limit. Yeah, a nice morning drive was perfect. It felt like it had been a while since I just drove my Kusanagi around. I was always in my Quadra for the extra space for everything. The Californian wind in my hair felt great even if it was more chilly than normal since winter was definitely here. Stopping at a red light, I sat up and stretched a bit as I waited, looking around as I took in all the people living here in North Carolina. The sidewalks were packed, and I had to wait a long while even after the light had changed for people to finish crossing. Lot of people wandering around today. I guess it just meant it was a good day. No gang wars or the like heating up. The 6th Street, TC thing had calmed down, and so North Carolina was, well, as peaceful as it ever got right now. The way cleared, I hit the gas, accelerating faster than I would since I was at the front of the pack. Shooting off until I hit the speed limit, and I matched it, still more than enough to fly down the tight North Carolina streets. The dojo came up sooner than I would have liked. If not for my eagerness to jump into a grind, I'd have just driven past and continued on, but it was time to work, not play. I parked next to the other batch of Kusanagi, all of them with the stupid upgrades, or alterations. Why they'd destroy a beautiful Kusanagi with all that junk I will never know. I headed inside, and quickly found what I came here for. Sensei. I greeted the stoic man as I headed straight at him. Kusanagi. I need a sparring partner, someone to push me to my absolute limits for as long as I can take it. Please. I asked, actually giving him a bow as I did so. He was quiet as he seemed to consider what I'd just said. Very well. Gather your blades. He ordered before turning to the room, and releasing a single shout. Not a word, but just a noise that stilled everyone, even me, for a moment at its force. A challenge has been issued. The one who cut down Musashi will be faced. Come forward. He called out, his voice loud enough to echo around the entire room. Well, I had wanted a challenge. I took the shinai and gave them a single flourish to feel their weight before approaching the mats. Already not just students but some of the Tiger Claw full gangers that hung around walked over to join. Time to get to work. Dash. Do you need a rest? Sensei asked as another of the students stumbled away. I'd learned quickly that this was full contact sparring, not kendo. The shinai was struck full force and I'd matched it. Quite a few bruised limbs or faces had stumbled off the mat away from me over the. I focused on my system. Been about an hour and a half? Not bad. But to answer Sensei's question, I shook my head. I was sweating from the exertion, and my chest was working faster, but I was controlling my breathing, and my body was more than ready for more. No. Next. I demanded, and he nodded, looking pleased, as the crowd that had only grown larger as I continued to beat every challenger. There had been some trouble. Some had their feelings hurt, but Sensei had been quick to fix that, and some of the TC guys had shut up the rest. I was known well enough now that what I was doing was seen more as something cool than as insulting. The crowd was quiet for a moment as everyone seemed to try and figure out who to bring out next, but then Sensei himself stepped forward and faced me. We began without a word, his single shinai against my dual wielding. He stepped forward and struck, and our match began. I'd fought him before, but I was much more competent now. My body easily deflected his quiet, powerful blows, and my skills were high enough that he wasn't just teaching me but actually facing me fully. The clack of our shinai was quite loud, a repeated noise as I swung and stabbed and deflected. Forced back, before shifting my style a bit to focus on more fast-paced swings. Back and forth, and neither of us actually got a hit on the other. Sensei was truly a skilled swordsman. It made me wonder what he was doing at this small dojo instead of as some Arasaka ninja or something, but then again, who says he wasn't? I wasn't the only person that moonlighted as something else. But I was also tired. Hours of fighting was enough to drain anyone, and I mistimed a defense and got a bonk on the head that sent me stumbling back a bit. I believe that is my win. Sensei offers out, noticeably more out of breath than normal. Hair. I offered him with a smile because he'd gotten me another XP alert. Seems so. Again? I offered and I noticed he actually seemed surprised. Still more? Yeah? I'm close. I can feel it. I told him, lying, but it was accurate enough. I see. Then you will face the challenge again. He called out and everyone looked surprised, but eventually one of the first boys I'd fought stepped forward and bowed to Sensei and then me. Oh, we were going through the whole thing again? Okay. I grinned and raised my blades. The other guy swallowed and raised his. Dash. A towel dropped over my face wasn't exactly the most comfortable thing. Thanks. You hit your limit. There is no shame in it, but do not overdo it again. You gain nothing from this. Oh, I gained a lot. I spoke through the wet towel. I felt rough. Muscles in my chest and back that were attached to my arms were really sore. I reached up and dragged the towel off. The cool towel was actual heaven as I ran it over my forehead and across my cheeks. Couldn't run it over the back of my neck for relief as that was all chrome now. I hadn't reached the level up I'd sought, but swinging my sword until I dropped put me a good way towards it. But not what you came for, he stated, and I looked up. I sat up with a groan, my abs were killing me. No. I'm close though. Then you will come back when you have recovered, he demanded, and I couldn't help but smile at his words. Yeah, I'll do that. I agreed as I slowly rose back to my feet. Ow. I still felt like I had a big bump on the top of my head. Sensei really had to strike the same place twice in a row? Recover before you attempt to drive. I will not condone you dying in such a way, he told me, surprising me as he turned and walked away. Huh. I think he kinda liked me. Finally up Motoko. One of the boys I'd fought twice called out as I stared at Sensei's back. Yeah, not feeling so overheated anymore. Come on then, we're grabbing some lunch from the stalls. It's on us, as thanks for the lessons. The much older guy smiled at me happily and I had a serious sense of disconnect because usually the TC guys were glaring at me at this point. Sure, I slurped the soba noodles as the tiger claw guys around me all joked and chattered about whatever their discussion drifted to. The soba was good. I'd had noodles here before, but it had been since June and I stayed at the dojo, so it was a good memory. The weirdness of all these gangsters joking around me without issue was a bit strange. Did you see his face, when she just locked his blade and slapped him in the face with it? Oh, shit, I was howling inside. Couldn't actually laugh in front of Sensei, but if I didn't have some chrome, I think I would have broken a rib. The boys all laughed and joked as if they were normal people and not, well, murderers and gangsters. What a weird situation. I slurped my noodles, and looked over. Men that would happily do terrible things to others were joking and acting normal. It reminded me of a song. You'll never know the murderer sitting next to you. I half whispered and half sang before stuffing my face with noodles. What's that? I asked, looking up before quickly swallowing the mouthful. Nothing, just a song stuck in my head. Oh, that's right. I heard the Oni mention it. You're a rocker boy too, right? I blinked at the tattooed man that was probably 10 years my senior who seemed to talk to me like he would his own kid sister. Fucking weird. Yeah, something like that. All right. I'm done. Thanks for the meal, boys. Anytime, Yuri. One of them called out and I winced at the name before waving and heading out. The situation with the tiger claws was different now. Was it Fujimura, the fact I was working with Hayato, or just my general actions? Either way, I was too tired to train anymore without a nap, so I slid onto the kusanagi and enjoyed the way my girl rumbled to life. Another thing to consider, but not worry about at the moment. The streets were busy as I slipped into the traffic, and I ended up caught in light after light. The slow stop and go traffic gave me plenty of time to consider what I should do from here. Probably needed to set up the next Section 9 training day. Maybe some sniper training? I bet I could get an Asura and train everyone in using it, giving Section 9 some low-level sniper support if needed. I was just about to start moving again when gunshots rang out, and like many of the people in cars around me, we ducked down. I took cover on the other side of the Kusanagi, as I was already drawing my boya ready to fire, but the bullets were coming my way. A Gangoon came stumbling down from a building, his feet practically slipping and failing to catch the steps as he held a unity up towards the door before just rocketing away with the gun pointed in the general direction of the doorway as ran. I considered taking a shot. He was right there. Probably some gangster causing issues. It was free XP. The boya was out and pointed, and his stumbling run wasn't enough for me to miss but. I holstered my gun as two goons stumbled out of the entrance. Some minor gang I had no idea of, shouting and cursing at the running man. Yeah, not any of my business. I slipped back onto the Kusanagi and hit the gas. Just another day in Night City. I was tinkering with some songs at home. I'd had plans for something big, but it turns out that even with my memory, getting the whole thing put together was a big mess. So I was mostly putting off that and playing with the song that had popped into my head at the noodle stand. All my friends are heathens, take it slow. I crooned as I strummed the chords. Heathens was a great song, and it really fit the dangerous Gangoon lifestyle. I had no doubt it would be popular if I ever played it. I hesitated mid-chord. Would I play it? I shook off the thought. That was a problem for future Motoko. Instead I kept playing the song, recording it into my music box as I suddenly got a call. I checked the number and frowned. That wasn't someone I expected to see again. This is Motoko. Kid. It's Bishop from the afterlife. Got a situation. You open for work? Bishop. The afterlife merc and his edgerunner team I'd worked with a while back. Bishop the solo that reminded me a lot of someone trying to be Morgan Blackhand too hard. Mira the sniper exotic. Stupid exotics. Sam? It was Sam something, their corpo front, and Hakase the street samurai. I'm kinda just hanging out, what's the sitch? Sam got klept trying to have a meeting with a corpo contact. The meeting didn't go well. We need to bust him out. We're on a time limit, before Iron Frontier decides he isn't worth trying to get info out of. I remember you're good at sneaking around. Pay? I asked, instead of what I really wanted to say, which was hell yes. Rescuing a gonk from some corpo sounded like fun. I was already setting my gear aside, and reaching for a Macstock. My muscles were still sore from earlier, but a Macstock would make up for not taking a nap. I'll pay at the afterlife rate, with hazard pay. I hummed, because frankly I had no idea what that was like, but I was already in my room grabbing some stuff. Copperhead? It was bulkier, but corpo security tended towards body armor. All the better to take out any street kids causing trouble. No. I looked at the two katana I had resting against the corner of the room. My older thermal katana, and the much higher quality, but also more brittle Musashi blade. Infiltration ninja. So you in? I'm in. I agreed, grabbing my thermal blade. I liked the brutality of it more. Sliding it into my belt. I turned and headed out to the living room, and slipped on my boots. Where are we meeting? I'll send you the deets. Talk to you when you get here, kid. Yeah. I grumbled as the call cut off, and I hurried out of the apartment. Time to have some fun. Normally I would have taken the quadra, but traffic was still pretty rough right now, and with a time limit I couldn't just amble along. My Kusanagi roared as I lane split, and then cut into a turn lane as they had a green and then cut over to keep going straight. The maneuver had me laughing a little. 100 driving XP gained. An alert meant it was well done, I guess? Either way, my unsafe driving cut off at least a few minutes from the drive as I pulled off the street and into an alley that my GPS was guiding me towards. The small pack of vehicles and familiar faces farther inside meant I didn't hesitate in driving right up. "I'm here." "Good timing," Bishop offered, and Mira, despite how she had acted last time, just gave me a single nod before turning her eyes back up to the sky. The joking shark girl was gone. Instead, a much more worried woman took her place. We were in an alley that connected a lot of office buildings, and the one she was focused on was probably where the target was. "Got any data on this Frontier Iron?" "Iron Frontier. They're a small corporation. They produce some of the EMP equipment for Militech. They're not big, but we were on a gig to pull some data from their server." Sam got grabbed while he was holding an above-board meeting with them. He got an alert off. Bishop started explaining as I arrived. "Can you get us in?" Mira asked, and I shrugged as I looked up at the building. "Do you have blueprints or anything? What floor the corp is on?" "7th. Hakase offered, while Bishop handed me a shard. I slotted it, and instantly firewalled it and checked it over, verifying it was clean before I accessed it. They controlled all of Floor 7, and it had security, turrets, and goons. Nothing like Kang Tao, or Arasaka, but big guns, and at least some military surplus. Of course this data was old. I could practically taste the netrunner who had pulled this data, some little net rat grabbing data from everything and anything they could get their hands on. The way the data was formatted meant for quick infiltrations and grabs. I unslotted the shard and tossed it back to Bishop. "Okay, I can help with this. Instead of getting you all in, I can get in and get to him, but it's the exfil that could be sketchy," I offered as I looked at the group. A sniper, a solo, and a samurai. Another netrunner would make this more comfortable, but I'd deal with what I had. "Are you sure? We can't take any risks with Sam," Mira asked, and I waved her off. "Infiltrating is my speciality. You want him to get out and fast? Without the corp that captured him just finishing him off when they notice you try to rescue him? Then I go in alone." I stated the fact as confidently as I could as I met the woman's eyes. "We'll hold the lobby. We can lock it down and give you an exit," Bishop offered, already formulating some sort of plan. "No," I denied instantly. "If I'm infiltrating, the moment anyone in that building gets a whiff something is up, they'll lock it down or worse. Mira is already looking at our exfiltration point," I said, and everyone looked to Mira, who had looked back down, then she looked back up. "No fucking way." "Fucking way," I denied as I looked up at the large glass windows. The buildings were tightly packed next to each other, and would be more than capable of giving sight lines. There were even old fire escapes on the other building. I was already off. A single bounce hit a concrete wall and then another had me over the guard wall around the building and I was off. With another jump I hit the bottom of an old fire escape, and with a bit of muscle got the ladder to descend to let the others follow. 7th floor. I reminded them, not wasting any more time, as I jumped off and headed towards the building's back door. Time to infiltrate a corpo building. The rear door was just like every rear door, locked, but that barely slowed me down. My Kiroshi scanned the door and confirmed a security trigger. If the door opened, it would let out an alarm, but I didn't even have to do anything to disable that. I popped open the security pad and licked 2 fingers, and a moment later the door unlocked. I quickly checked inside. The long hallway wasn't empty, unfortunately, and I just huddled down, fingers pressed against the pad, keeping the lock from activating and watching through the tiny crack as the worker of the place walked down the hall and then into one of the rooms. Once he was gone, I slipped in, noticing the foil taped over the security system that would sound the alarm in case anyone opened the door. Workers making sure they had rear access, no doubt, likely a smoke break if the cigarette butts littering the alley told the story correctly. I was in with a whisper. I crept down the hall and checked into the room the worker had just left. Break room. Perfect. I went past and right into another door that said employees only. The workers were rent-a-cops. The cheap kind. Nothing better than greeters at the front desk. So I wasn't worried about them, but unfortunately, this wasn't just a motel or something. Corpo-rented space meant security was tighter. I needed a jack-in point. Something in the building, so I could slip into their security. Unfortunately, the room I was in was nothing but a storage room. There wasn't even a computer or security access point. I flashed my Karoshi as I started scanning. They had some security obviously. Where did they keep their security room? Not on the ground floor, which is already impressive for building security. Someone knew what they were doing. I turned around and after checking slipped into the hallway and went back the way I came. Only one way forward. I opened the break room and sauntered in like everything was normal. The casual movements gave me the few seconds I needed to approach the worker. He looked up from his coffee and then back down, and then jerked up just as I reached him. One hand around his mouth giving me half a second to muffle his shout as my arm wrapped around and secured his larynx. I leapt a bit to get the right grip so I was practically monkeying on his back, but he choked out his cry for help and as I adjusted my grip, I cut off the blood to his brain and he dropped. I made sure he didn't break his skull on the way down and laid him out. 250 XP gained. Sorry, buddy. I whispered as I started undressing him while grabbing his ID shard which would give me access to the elevator. I ended up tying him up as best I could with the crap in the break room and stuffing him in one of the cupboards around the room. That should at least slow him down when he woke up. I headed out and pulled the security guard's cap lower over my face as I walked past a security camera and towards the elevator. My finger hovered around the 7 for a moment, but I ended up hitting 2 instead. The shard Bishop had given me had shown there was a set of stairs on the 7th floor. There just weren't any matching stairs on the bottom floor. Definitely a fire hazard, but the exact sort of security concern North Carolina cared more about. The elevator opened and it hit what I expected. It was a large room that had doors connecting to multiple different businesses. I walked around for a moment as if just doing checks as a security guard, until I found what I was looking for. The black security-only letters on the door told me I'd found what I was looking for. I tapped my badge against the security panel and the door unlocked. I stepped in, and instantly I was moving. The small security room wasn't empty, and the second rent-a-cop never even got time to yelp as I wrapped my arms around the second guy. 250 XP gained. I looked around the room and grinned. Here was the security access point. I pulled the katana out from under my jacket and in my pants and put it to the side as I secured the second guard with his own belt and pants and then stuffed him into a corner. Now let's find out what kind of security we're dealing with here. Mira Kakaradon. See anything? Bishop asked, and Mira just snarled at him, showing her teeth. They were stuck up on the stupid fire escape while Sam could be tortured to death and the only thing she could see was a fucking hallway. Get a new pair of Karoshi if you can't see the same shit I am. She snapped and Bishop stepped back a bit, but all of them were tense. Peace. She will succeed, or she will fail. We will act when the time is right either way. Hakase offered and Mira rolled her eyes. He'd heard that from some old mystic and often repeated it in slightly different terms whenever the chance popped up. Where is she? What's taking so long? Mira whispered, but then stalled out because someone sauntered down the hallway. Someone that didn't fit. That's her. She whispered and Bishop jerked to look. Watching as our infiltrator walked down the hallway calmly without trying to sneak or anything until she hit a door, she looked it over for a second and then knocked. Did she just fucking knock? How is that sneaking around? Mira hissed and Bishop had no answers as the door obviously opened. A moment later there was a blur and the girl was no longer unarmed as her katana was out and having just finished a cut. A fine cut. Hakase muttered the blade obsessed gonk, sounded seriously impressed. Mira could just make out the blood as the girl walked into the room. I guess she's doing okay then. Bishop whispered and Mira took a breath. Okay. The kid was good enough to be in the afterlife. Trust in that. The slump of the body hitting the floor would have alerted the other two guards in this security room that something was up, if I hadn't already moved through the room. Thrown knife into guard 2. He was stupid enough not to have his helmet on, and the knife thunked into the back of his head, as the katana slipped through the spine of Gonk 3. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. I drew out my blade, and retrieved my knife as I walked over to the security terminal. The second-floor mall cops had some of the building's security, but this floor was a black wall to their systems, but between their data, and the shard that Bishop had given me, I'd had everything I needed to get around up here. Corporate offices weren't exactly black sites. It wasn't hard to slip onto the floor through the stair access and head straight for the security office. With these 3 gone, and the security terminal, I should be able to disable all the rest of their defenses. I looked over the gonks for a moment. Yeah, the armor was crap. Old Militech stuff, but I doubted they'd even bothered to change the inserts since they bought them. On top of that, these guys weren't ex-soldiers. Just hired goons. I slipped into their network without any trouble. Old Militech firewalls. Nothing that would slow me down, especially not from inside the network. I blinked my eyes and had access to all the camera systems, as well as the personnel IDs. The data shard from Bishop had mentioned the corpo that Sam was coming to meet, and there he was, alongside 2 other security guards. Well now. I pulled out of the system and walked back out to the hallway. I was clear for now, so I checked out the window. I could see Mira and the others looking at me, but I ignored them. I could take the elevator, the stairs, or right here. The window wasn't bulletproof, we were too high up for that to really be needed. My katana heated up as I slowly poked it through the glass, cutting out a weak point I could use. I could see the 3 of them watching me, probably thinking I was crazy as I cut through the glass to weaken it for later. Once I was satisfied, I headed back and turned a corner, slowing a bit to stay silent as I approached an open room. There were 2 more inside. I did a quick peek and then I was across the door without anyone noticing and moving on. As much as I wanted the XP, no point in killing a bunch of civvy workers. Sneaking around this office was kinda odd, but now that I had vision on everyone, it was a simple job to just keep moving. Finally, I reached where I needed to go. A hallway that had a locked and secured door. 2 security guards outside, and another couple in, along with the man that had last been with Sam, so probably he was inside. I loosened my katana in the sheath and then simply activated my Sandy. Everything slowed as I rushed out down the hall. A blur of motion that the guards' organic, or cybernetic eyes were just starting to catch when I reached them. I skipped the first guy. Instead, my cut as I pulled my katana from the sheath went through the second guard, just under his helmet and all the way out and through. The return cut had me bouncing a bit back, slicing through the second guard's throat before bringing it back around and stabbing through. The quiet gasps as both men died and slumped to the floor was quiet, but I still waited to see if there was any motion from inside. Nothing. 500 XP gained. 500 XP gained. I took a breath, let the Sandy cycle a bit. The warmth on my neck telling me I'd be getting close to my limit soon. I took the moment I had to check the guards. Again, shit quality equipment. Nothing worth even looting at this rate, although I took a moment to adjust the IX the guard had been carrying up against the wall that would come in handy. Then I rose up and opened the door. Samuel Perry. This had not gone as planned. He spat blood. Truly Hansen hadn't changed at all from when he was just an up-and-comer. Now my old friend, you know I don't like doing this, but I need to know what gonk fuck shitstain thinks they're going to steal from me? Just give me the name and I promise I won't just throw you in the trash. as a respect for an old boss. Hansen was lying, of course. The moment he cracked, he would get a bullet and a quick toss into the nearest trash can. Hansen had always been a piece of scop. He breathed out, painfully, his ribs were killing him. His pain editor was working, but he didn't want to turn it on fully. The fact was, letting it hurt meant that Hansen was enjoying playing with him, and if he thought it wasn't working, worse things than just pain would be in his future. "Just tell me, Sam, that's all I want." Hansen lied with a smirk that wasn't even trying to hide that fact. "Come on, Bishop. I have enough contacts, I'm valuable enough to get out of here. Come on, Mira, I know you like me. Force that cold bastard to come rescue me." The door opened, and for a moment Sam didn't really register it. Why would he? It wasn't the first time the guards had swapped out, or Hansen had left to take a leak. But then as Sam opened his one good eye, he couldn't help but blink at what he was seeing. Who was that? There was a blur of motion that Sam had to slowly replay in his mind to understand. She stepped in, and cut with her katana, drew a knife and tossed it at another guard, before spinning around using the guard she had just cut down as a shield to draw close and cut off the arm of the third. His scream was silenced before it could even begin. And as Hansen reached to pull his pistol, suddenly a boya of all things was pointed at him, as the girl had simply followed the motion, her blade still stuck into the second guard's chest where she had cut into him from shoulder to chest. There had been no hesitation. Just a single constant movement that left death in her wake. "Don't," she offered simply as a boya pointed at Hansen's head. Hey, we can talk about this." "Sam. Nice to see you again. I'm your extraction, are you able to move?" The sound of a confident woman cut off Hansen entirely, and it was a cut-off. Hansen for once in his life had a brain and shut up as Sam blinked weakly. "Shoot him," he said instead of answering her question, and to his surprise the sound of a boya echoed out through the room, making him flinch, and Hansen splattered across the wall. "Are you able to move?" she asked again as she finally pulled her sword out of the dying guard, and holstered her pistol and sword in a single movement. "Yes," he hissed, but he was still tied to the chair. She gathered her thrown knife and quickly cut his bonds, and Sam rose before almost instantly falling forward into a much smaller body that hefted him a bit. "I'll take that as a no. I'm afraid that my shot has set off the alarms. This isn't going to be an easy path for you. Here, put this on." She plopped him lightly back into the chair and a moment later put something on his head. "One of the guards' helmets?" "All right, time to go," she said, and hefted him up into a shoulder carry that knocked the air out of him, but to his surprise she started moving just a moment later. He really wanted to tell her he could probably walk, but she didn't seem to care. Grabbing one of the guards' axe at the door and instantly firing down the hall. Sam couldn't see anything other than her back as she started jogging, which hurt, but he could hear a scream of people not used to being shot at. She hurried on and then around a corner. And again firing every once in a while and sending people screaming. "Okay, hold on," she ordered, a bit strained as he heard gunshots, the rest of the magazine going off, and the sound of shattering glass. "This is going to hurt," she said, and he wondered what she meant, before he managed to just see past her and... No. He managed to gasp out, but she didn't stop as she raced for an open window and leapt. Her shoulder plowed into his stomach as she leapt, and that hurt. But then they were weightless for a while before suddenly they slammed into something metal and very painful. "Ow," she muttered after a few moments, when to his surprise they didn't keep falling despite the fact he was looking down at a long drop. "Hold on," she grunted. He moved up a bit and then more, and then he was thrown over a metal railing, landing painfully, but... Sam. Mira was there grabbing at him, and Bishop and Hekase too. "Fuck." The woman rolled over the railing and then slammed into the ground next to him. She was breathing heavily and she rose wincing as she grabbed her ribs. "Not doing that again," she muttered as she stood. "Let's go." Bishop ordered, and he and Hakase grabbed him, and then there were a lot of stairs, but he was free.